My folks didn't show up to my wedding because apparently I committed the ultimate crime of tying the knot before my perfect little sister. And now, that picture-perfect image they've always tried to protect? Yeah, it's finally falling apart. So here's the deal. I'm 33, and about 8 months ago, I married the love of my life after we'd been together for 4 years. Everyone I cared about showed up for the big day, except for my parents and my sister, Sabrina, who's 29. Her absence wasn't all that surprising, honestly. We've never exactly been close. But given our family's history, I probably should have seen the rest coming too. Let me rewind a bit and explain the dynamics in my family, because without that context, none of this really makes sense. Now, I'm not saying my parents are evil or anything, and I can't entirely blame them for putting Sabrina on a pedestal. The truth is, she's always been ridiculously good at, well, just about everything. From the moment she learned to walk, she had this knack for capturing every ounce of attention in the room. Back in elementary school, she racked up spelling bee trophies, swept science fairs, and wowed everyone at talent shows. High school wasn't any different. She was class president, valedictorian, and, of course, prom queen. She's tall, slim, and pretty enough to pull off modeling gigs, which she actually did in college before switching her focus to business. I still remember the day she landed her first modeling job during sophomore year. My parents were over the moon. They threw this huge celebration, inviting everyone from extended family to her college friends. Her first professional headshot? It's still framed and hanging above the fireplace at their house like it's a family heirloom. Meanwhile, when I graduated with my degree in computer science that same year, their reaction was barely more than a half-hearted good job before diving into the logistics of Sabrina's next photo shoot. Fast forward to now, Sabrina's got a plush job at some big-name company. She's already a senior executive with a corner office and a sleek corporate car to match. She's 30 and living the kind of life my parents love to brag about. Me? I work as a mid-level software developer at a solid tech company. I actually really enjoy what I do, and I'm proud of how far I've come. But let's be honest, it's not the kind of career that makes parents brag at dinner parties. On top of that, I've always been shorter and caviar than Sabrina. Growing up, my mom was relentless about my appearance. She'd make comments about my weight, sign me up for exercise classes I never asked for, and put me on one restrictive diet after another. Her go-to lines were things like, "Sabrina never has issues with her weight," or, "If you just tried harder, you could look like your sister." By high school, I had gotten pretty good at brushing those comments off, but they still left a mark. Over time, I started to accept that my role in the family was just different. My accomplishments never seemed to spark the same joy in my parents as anything Sabrina did. I spent years trying to earn their approval. I joined every club they nudged me toward, enrolled in the classes they suggested, and even gave modeling a shot for a hot minute. That attempt was a flop, something Sabrina still teases me about to this day. No matter what I did, it was never quite enough. I was always the runner-up in my own family story. Eventually, somewhere in my mid-20s, I just stopped trying to impress them. I shifted my energy toward building my own path, growing in my career, and surrounding myself with people who saw and appreciated me for who I truly was. Honestly, life got a lot better after that. Because my parents cared so much about keeping up appearances, I kept my distance. Our interactions became surface level. At holiday dinners or the occasional family event, I'd smile and nod while they went on and on about Sabrina's latest promotion, boyfriend, or glamorous getaway. They never noticed I'd emotionally checked out. They were too busy basking in Sabrina's spotlight. Then something unexpected happened. At a tech conference, I met the man who would eventually become my husband. We were introduced through a mutual friend, and right away, he saw me in a way my family never had. He appreciated my sarcastic sense of humor, my coding skills, and yeah, even the way I looked. Not once did he try to change me. He never compared me to anyone else. After 4 years together, He proposed to me one quiet evening while we were curled up on the couch, eating takeout with our favorite show playing in the background. It was simple, it was sweet, it was perfect. Naturally, I shared the big news with my parents. Their reaction should have been my first warning sign. Instead of congratulations, I was met with silence. After a beat, my mom asked if I was sure I wanted to rush into things and casually suggested I get in shape before the wedding. My dad barely said a word. My husband picked up on their coldness during the engagement party, though at the time, I was too anxious to fully register it. He told me he'd seen them huddled in a corner, whispering over my mom's phone. Later, he overheard enough to piece together that they were talking to Sabrina, who was apparently crying. From what he caught, the gist was that this wasn't supposed to happen, that they never thought Alyssa would get married first. Planning the wedding came with a few bumps. Even though Sabrina wasn't even engaged, my mom had already created several Pinterest boards full of wedding ideas for her. She had zero interest in helping me pick a dress or choose a venue. When I finally chose my gown, a simple but elegant A-line dress that made me feel genuinely beautiful, my mom's only comment was that it was appropriate for my body type. So I ended up planning most of the wedding with my future mother-in-law, who was an absolute gem. She treated me like the daughter she never had. My husband and I went over the guest list together, several times, actually, to make sure we didn't miss anyone. We sent out digital and paper invitations, and I know for a fact my parents got theirs. The online invites had red receipts. When I realized my parents still hadn't RSVP'd, I reached out again and again, calls, texts, even a few emails. Each time, I either got silence or vague excuses about how busy they were and needing to check their schedules. But honestly, I didn't have the time or emotional space to chase them down. I was too wrapped up in getting everything ready for the big day. Thankfully, my in-laws stepped in with open arms. They helped with everything, from designing seating charts to picking out flower arrangements. Even during the lovely bridal shower my husband's sister threw for me, no one brought up the obvious elephant in the room. My own family wasn't there. Still, despite their absence, the wedding day turned out to be absolutely beautiful. We had a sweet, low-key ceremony in the morning, followed by an easygoing afternoon celebration in a garden. People kept saying how happy we looked, how in love we seemed, and they were right. But there were these moments, brief, heavy pauses where their absence felt almost physical. Like when I glanced at the front row and saw the empty seats. Or during the father-daughter dance, which I couldn't take part in because my dad had chosen not to show. After the honeymoon, I decided it was time for answers. When I finally managed to get them on the phone, they told me they were deeply hurt because they claimed they never got a proper invitation. My mom went off on this long rant, saying I'd shut them out, that she'd always dreamed of helping plan her daughter's weddings, and how hurtful it was to be excluded like that. I was stunned. Because I know we sent them invitations, both digital and physical. Right then during the call, I checked our records and confirmed that everything had gone out. Even the physical invites were marked as delivered. But instead of confronting them for clearly trying to gaslight me, I just said, "I'm sorry if there was some mix-up," and ended the call. Later that night, my husband reminded me of all the little red flags I'd overlooked, like how my parents seemed more surprised than excited when we announced our engagement, or how they kept coming up with reasons not to help with the planning. He hadn't said anything at the time because he didn't want to add stress to an already chaotic process, but looking back, it was obvious. It finally clicked. The idea that I, the less successful, less celebrated daughter, was getting married before Sabrina was more than they could handle. Their whole reaction just confirmed something I'd always suspected, but never wanted to believe. No matter what I did, I'd never be able to measure up to my sister in their eyes. And the worst part? The thing that still stings? Realizing that my wedding day, something that should have been about love and new beginnings, was twisted into yet another opportunity for them to uphold their picture-perfect family image, with Sabrina firmly in the spotlight. Not long ago, I found out Sabrina had gotten engaged to someone she's been dating for about a year. I heard it through family members, since I'm not included in the group chats anymore. My parents, predictably, are over the moon. They're planning this extravagant wedding like it's the event of the decade. High-end venues, designer dresses, private fittings. My mom is going all out. All the things I never got to share with her. What's wild, though, is that more and more relatives are quietly declining to attend Sabrina's wedding or engagement party. Apparently, word got around about how my parents handled things at my wedding, and people took notice. When family members ask why my parents didn't come to my wedding, I don't sugarcoat it. I tell them the truth. They couldn't stand that I got married before their favorite daughter. That's it. I don't try to play the victim or twist the story. I just tell it how I experienced it. Then, just a few days ago, my parents reached out again, this time accusing me of deliberately sabotaging Sabrina's wedding. According to them, family members are using made-up excuses not to attend her celebrations, and it's my fault for poisoning the well. My cousin, who spoke with Sabrina, said she's upset because people told her they don't want to be part of anything involving my parents after how they treated me. My parents are convinced I'm jealous of Sabrina's big, fancy wedding and that I've been going around spreading lies. But here's the thing, I haven't lied. Not once. All I've done is share what actually happened. If the truth paints them in a bad light, maybe that's something they need to reflect on instead of blaming me. And as things keep unraveling, it's getting harder and harder to keep pretending we have a normal relationship. The way they handled my wedding made it painfully clear I will never be enough for them no matter what I do. Oddly enough, it's not their absence at the ceremony that hurts the most anymore. It's accepting the reality that I never had the kind of warm, supportive parents I always hoped for. It felt like the right time to stop avoiding things and just lay it all out, especially after they started texting me about how I'd tarnished the family reputation. During the call, they didn't hold back. They accused me of being jealous and claimed I had orchestrated some elaborate plan to make Sabrina look bad. Normally, I would have defended myself, tried to reason with them, but not this time. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I agreed with them, but not the way they expected. I said, "You're right. I am jealous. Not once have I ever envied Sabrina's job, her accolades, or even the way she looks. What I've always wished for, what I've ached for, is the kind of unconditional love and support you gave her without hesitation, the kind you never even tried to show me." There was this long pause on the other end of the line. Then my mom jumped in, brushing it all off, saying I was being dramatic and that they had always treated us the same. And something inside me cracked open right then. All the feelings I'd pushed down for years came surging to the surface. I started listing everything, every birthday that got overshadowed by Sabrina's latest accomplishment. The time my mom canceled my high school graduation dinner because Sabrina had a modeling callback. How her prom dress cost more than an entire year's worth of my college textbooks. My dad tried to cut me off, claiming I was exaggerating, but I didn't stop. I talked about what it was like watching them plan a fantasy wedding for my sister for years, while barely lifting a finger to help with mine. I described how painful it was to look out on my wedding day and see their empty seats, how my mother-in-law had to step in for everything from dress shopping to finalizing the guest list. And their response? They flipped it around. Instead of hearing me out, they made it all about them. "If you felt this way, why didn't you ever say something?" my mom demanded, as if I hadn't been trying to talk to them for years. Then my dad chimed in, saying I was being spiteful and unfair for talking to our relatives about how I felt. That's when my mom said something that pulled everything into focus. She said, "We never thought you'd go so far as to try to ruin Sabrina's wedding out of bitterness. But we always knew you were insecure about her success. This isn't how we raised you." And that's when I realized they weren't even listening. They couldn't see how their actions led to this. They weren't interested in my hurt, only Sabrina's wedding. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to make peace. I didn't backtrack. I didn't apologize. I just spoke my truth. "You're right," I said. "You did raise me. You taught me that I'd never be enough. That whatever I did, it would always pale in comparison to Sabrina's success. You made it clear that keeping up the illusion of the perfect family mattered more than how I felt. I took a breath. But you also taught me something you didn't mean to, something that's finally helping me now. You taught me that I deserve better than this. There was another long silence. Then my dad spoke, and his voice was cool, almost detached. Well, he said, maybe we should stop pretending we're bad parents, since you've already made up your mind and clearly take pleasure in painting us that way. We thought, as family, you'd try to help fix things. But it's obvious you've chosen your side. And my mom? She hit me with the final jab. Maybe you just couldn't stand not being the center of attention. We always tried to treat you both fairly, Alyssa. That's not our fault. You chose to play the victim. I didn't argue. What was the point? Everything I'd just said had been confirmed, right out of their mouths. Even in this final conversation, they couldn't acknowledge a single ounce of wrongdoing. So I just hung up, said goodbye, and ended the call. And the strange part? I didn't feel shattered. I felt free. Sure, I cried, but not the way I used to, the sobbing, lonely kind of tears from when I was a kid, just trying to be seen. These tears were different. These were tears of release. Later that evening, I was sitting on the back porch, staring at the sunset, when my husband came outside and quietly sat next to me. He didn't say a word at first. He just reached for my hand and held it. After a little while, I asked him, "They're never going to change, are they?" He squeezed my hand gently. "No, but you have. And that's what matters." And he's right. I have changed. The girl who used to twist herself into knots trying to earn her parents' approval, she's gone. And the woman I've become? She doesn't need their validation anymore. It still hurts, don't get me wrong. Realizing your parents will never be the people you hoped they could be is no small thing. But holding on to that hope hurt more. For the first time, I honestly don't care what happens with Sabrina's wedding or all the family drama surrounding it. I said my piece. I told my truth. Now, whatever comes next, it's on them. And the weirdest part? I feel lighter. Like I finally set down a weight I've been carrying my whole life. It's not the ending I once dreamed of, but maybe it's the one I needed. The freedom to stop chasing love that should have been freely given in the first place. It's been 3 days since that phone call with my parents, and just when I thought things might settle down, Sabrina decided to jump into the mess. Let's just say, it didn't go the way she planned. Yesterday morning, I got a message from her. A long, neatly written text that was clearly meant to sound thoughtful and mature, but the condescension practically dripped from every word. She wrote, "What you said to our parents was completely out of line. They've supported us our entire lives and have given us everything. You can't just call them bad parents because you feel insecure about the choices you've made." And there it is, classic Sabrina. Sabrina kept going, as usual, with that signature mix of smug superiority and carefully veiled jabs. "I understand your wedding may not have turned out the way you hoped," she wrote, "but that doesn't give you the right to sabotage mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting to celebrate those of us who have worked hard to meet certain standards. Alyssa, not everything needs to be a competition." I didn't reply. At this point in my life, I've learned that responding to Sabrina only gives her more fuel. I've spent too many years dealing with her mind games and manipulations. So instead of replying, I just blocked her number. Quiet. Final. I figured that would be the end of it, knowing full well Sabrina doesn't take kindly to being ignored. A few hours later, while I was at work, I got a call from my husband. He was laughing so hard he could barely get the words out. Apparently, since she couldn't get through to me, Sabrina took it upon herself to track down his personal number, probably snagged it from a mutual acquaintance, and proceeded to send him a string of long, dramatic texts explaining exactly why she believed my relationship with her had always been strained. The first message started off trying to sound civil and high-minded. "As Alyssa's sister, and someone who genuinely cares about the well-being of our family, I feel compelled to reach out." But it didn't take long before the gloves came off and her true colors came through. She informed my husband, that it was now his job to help me behave more appropriately, since he was the new man in my life. The messages only got more patronizing from there. She wrote things like, family dynamics are complicated, and went on to suggest that someone with Alyssa's emotional sensitivity may not fully understand the bigger picture. Keep in mind, she's sending this to a man who has an MBA, works as a software architect, and somehow still manages to keep up with my sarcasm and weird movie references. Then came her not-so-subtle pitch, clearly trying to appeal to what she assumed were his ambitions. Surely you understand that maintaining a good relationship with successful family members like myself could be beneficial for your future. Alyssa's behavior is only hurting her own opportunities, and, by extension, yours. My husband, bless him, has always seen straight through Sabrina's facade. He thought the entire message chain was hilarious. What cracked him up the most was her assumption that her job title or some vague networking benefit would somehow impress him. He looked at me that night and said, "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" When I got home, we sat on the couch and read the messages together. But instead of crying or feeling humiliated like I might have years ago, I just laughed. Not the bitter kind of laugh, either. It felt good, like letting out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Seeing Sabrina's manipulation tactics fail so completely, especially when aimed at someone totally immune to her charm, was oddly satisfying. And that's when it hit me. For all her success, all her titles, all her carefully crafted perfection, Sabrina is still the same insecure girl she was in high school. The one who always had to tear someone down to feel superior. She thought she could control me by going through my husband, which just shows how little she understands what a healthy relationship even looks like. That's always been her fallback move, though. When we were younger and she couldn't get under my skin directly, she'd go after my friends. She tried to turn them against me too. Different decade, same playbook. Looking at it now with fresh eyes, I finally understand that Sabrina's behavior wasn't just about sibling rivalry. It was about power. She needed to stay on top, to be the star, to keep my parents and everyone else focused on her. She couldn't just succeed. She had to outshine me. She couldn't just celebrate her wins. She had to make sure everyone noticed where I fell short. But here's the difference now. I'm not playing her game anymore. 10 years ago, her messages would have wrecked me. 5 years ago, they would have made me question myself. But today, I see it for what it is: petty, desperate, and kind of ridiculous. And my husband? His response was perfect. He didn't feed into the drama. Didn't argue. He just replied, "Thank you for your concern about Alyssa's well-being. As her husband, my role is to support her happiness, not to manage her behavior. If you have any further concerns, I suggest you bring them to Alyssa directly. Wishing you a pleasant day." And that was it. Sabrina couldn't help herself. She had to send one final parting shot. "I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all falls apart." Funny how her help always comes with judgment, threats, and just enough guilt to keep you wondering if she's right. But all she really did was confirm exactly why I need to keep my distance. Her messages proved nothing has changed. She's still the same calculating person, still trying to spin every situation, still convinced that the family narrative revolves around her. Any deviation from that script? A threat. Any autonomy? Rebellion. And you know what the most satisfying part is? Not only did she fail to drive a wedge between me and my husband, she actually brought us closer. That night, we made jokes about her texts, poured a couple drinks, and started planning a weekend getaway together. Because this laughter, this teamwork, this peace, is what real family feels like. It isn't about playing roles or chasing approval. It's about showing up, having each other's backs, and knowing you're loved for who you are, not who someone expects you to be. Sabrina may still be trapped in her perfect little play, but I've walked off that stage. And I'm not looking back. Now more than ever, I'm convinced that the smartest thing I can do is keep a healthy distance from all the chaos surrounding Sabrina's wedding. My husband and I have both agreed we're done getting dragged into my family's endless cycles of drama and control. Instead, we're focusing on building something of our own. A life that feels good, quiet, real. You know that old saying, success is the best revenge? I've come to realize that success isn't about impressing anyone else or trying to win the approval of people who never really saw you in the first place. It's about standing by your choices, choosing growth, and surrounding yourself with people who lift you up instead of drag you down. And by that standard, I've never felt more successful in my life. It's been 2 weeks since Sabrina's failed little stunt with my husband, and somehow, things have only escalated since then. My parents are now in full panic mode, scrambling to patch up the cracks in their picture-perfect image. I found out, through the grapevine, that they've been calling up relatives one by one, trying to rewrite the story. According to them, I've been spreading lies about being excluded, all because I'm apparently jealous of Sabrina's fairy tale wedding. They're telling people I'm bitter because her wedding is going to be fancier, more elegant, just plain better than mine ever was. And here's the kicker. They're now claiming that I intentionally left them out of my wedding so I could play the victim. It's actually kind of hilarious. These are people who have lived in the same house for over 30 years. Their email has been the same since dial-up. But suddenly, I sent the invites to an old email address and an outdated physical address? Please. The good news? No one's buying it. In fact, more and more relatives are starting to speak up about what they've seen over the years. One of my aunts told me that my mom has pulled similar stunts before, always trying to make sure Sabrina was the star of the show at family events. But this time, it's backfiring. In a twist I never expected, some major family members, people who were supposed to play big roles in Sabrina's wedding, are backing out. The venue they were counting on through a family connection? No longer available. A close friend of the family who owns a luxury dress shop? Suddenly swamped with schedule conflicts. At a family get-together last weekend, things hit a boiling point. Someone innocently asked to see photos from my wedding, and that's when my mom lost it. She launched into a dramatic rant about how I've changed since getting married, accusing me of trying to tear the family apart out of jealousy. But instead of rallying to her side, a lot of people were just stunned. Some didn't even know what had happened. Her outburst only added more cracks to their carefully curated reputation. The irony of it all? The more they try to maintain the illusion of a perfect family, the faster it crumbles. Every time they open their mouths to defend themselves, they reveal a little more of who they really are. And people are noticing. Relatives who used to stay neutral are now quietly choosing sides. Even my dad's brother, the one who's always been silent for the sake of peace, recently reached out. He apologized for never speaking up before and told me he and his whole family won't be attending any of Sabrina's wedding festivities. I haven't had to say a word. The truth is doing the heavy lifting for me. Every time my parents or Sabrina try to spin the narrative, they end up confirming everything I've ever said. All those years I stayed quiet, letting things slide in the name of keeping the peace, that silence only enabled their behavior. My husband summed it up perfectly the other night. He said, they spent decades building this polished image of a perfect family, but it was built on favoritism and emotional manipulation. Eventually, that kind of structure has to collapse. And honestly, I'm doing great. I'm not stuck trying to prove myself to anyone anymore. I'm no longer carrying the weight of Sabrina's moods or my parents' expectations. For the first time in my life, I don't feel responsible for upholding someone else's fantasy. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't fight. It's just let the truth breathe. Let it speak for itself.